All right, thank you all for attending. We'll go ahead and start the webinar now. Today's webinar is titled Getting to Zero, Engaging the Houseball Community, and brought to you by Proactive Community Services in collaboration with AIDS Foundation Chicago and Illinois Department of Health. Proactive Community Services, or PCS, was founded in February 2005 by an African-American woman who saw a need to close the widening social and health disparities that severely affected African Americans. PCS is a minority-serving human service organization located in the South suburban community of Flossmoor and provides comprehensive services to 28 South and 5 Southwest suburban communities. The agency's service portfolio includes health and wellness and workforce development and supported services. During this webinar, PCS invites faith leaders, community advocates, and other individuals interested in reducing the rate of HIV, STI, and other communicable diseases in Black and Brown communities to join this conversation facilitated by Al Forbes, MBA of Forbes Consulting, Minister Oliver W. Patton Jr., MSP of Love Abide MB Church, and Pastor Charles Strait of Faith United Methodist Church, with guest speaker Tremaine Sims. We encourage you to please join us next week for our webinar, Getting to Zero, Crystal Meth and Black MSM, Thursday, June 16th at 6 p.m. Central. You can also view recordings of past sessions on the PCS website at pcsil.org by navigating to past webinars in the Events and Webinars section of the homepage. Please continue this and other conversations on ending the epidemic on Facebook. As a reminder, your cameras and microphones are set to off, so please write your questions and comments in the chat box, which we will be monitoring. If you would like to come off mute to ask a question, please raise your hand from your Zoom panel and I'll give you the floor. Also, PCS is looking to get more speakers for future webinars. Please send information for potential speakers to gtz-webinars@pcsil.org. As a heads up, the Chai Black Pride Mini Ball is on Sunday, July 3rd from 7 p.m. to midnight. Check out Chicago Black Pride on Facebook for more information. And finally, as a disclaimer, the views and opinions expressed in our discussion are those of the presenters and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Proactive Community Services. All right, with all that said, we're ready to begin. I'll throw it over to Al first to introduce himself and we'll go around the panel.
Thank you, and welcome back for another session here at Thursday Night Talks. I'm very excited tonight to have us talk with the house ball community, and we're going to be riveted in your seats by the legendary Father Flocka. In the meantime, before we get to our legendary father, I'm going to ask my co-facilitators to introduce themselves. Pastor Reverend Strait.
Thank you, Al, and good evening, everybody. It's such a joy to be back and to engage in this riveting conversation about the ball community. There are lots of things I'm looking forward to learning. I know a little bit, but I'm excited about knowing much more. And I'm also excited about ways that we can engage it and getting to zero with this community. So I'm looking forward to Father Flocka and this conversation this afternoon.
Excellent. And Minister Patton.
Hello, all. Minister Patton here. It's glad to be back. And same as Pastor Strait, tonight I want to learn a little bit more about the ball community. I haven't heard too much. I've seen certain things and didn't know it was ball community. I just thought it was just drag queen dressing, but it's more involved and more detailed than just that. So tonight I'm gonna learn. I'm gonna have a few questions, but I'm also gonna learn and then figure out how we can, in like Pastor Strait said, engage the religious community, the church community, into it. How can we get together and come and sit at a table and come to an agreement on how to get to zero.
Thank you. And now, without further ado, kitty cat, representing the house, the father, the legendary Father Flocka.
Hello, everyone. I am the legendary father of Flocka Lavin. I've been in the barroom scene community since 2004 and still present today. I'm just going to be real honest with you guys. I'm a little nervous about this right now. This is my first time, actually being a speaker and a vocal advocate for the barroom community. Like I told Al earlier, I was normally a behind the scenes guy before this weekend once I received my legendary and father status. I guess in my presentation, I guess we will get to what, all of that means, legendary and father. Okay, go ahead, Al. I'm sorry.
No, I want to make sure you have the floor until you tell me to come back in. Go ahead.
Okay. All right. The first drag ball was hosted in 1920, back in the Harlem Renaissance. It was a place for people of the LGBT community to convene and actually be themselves. And they wanted to outlet and express themselves. In 1972, Crystal LaBeija created the first house, which was LaBeija. So houses were created because back then, and even still today now, a lot of LGBT community members are not accepted by their families. So they were put out the house, they were left to fend for themselves. And the pier in New York is where a lot of them would meet up. And so a lot of them would start to, use the resources that they had together to help each other survive. And that's how houses were created. I don't know if you guys have seen Pose, but it kind of gives you a visual of what it looked like. They would just meet people off the street and say, hey, you don't need to be out here prostituting, come with me and we can teach you a better way of life. Ballroom in 1980 is when the HIV and AIDS epidemic really took impact into the ballroom community. It was day after day after day after day that a lot of the people in the ballroom scene community were burying a lot of their friends. And from then, a lot of people started to say that they were not going to let this take over them. They were tired of losing their friends, and they started to do the work and advocate. They started to do protests, and they would, trying to figure out how we can bring an end to this. In the early 2000s, they started to work with agencies that would help throw balls to bring awareness to it and to bring resources to everyone. What I like to call the ballroom today is like the gay Hollywood. It's where everyone gets to express themselves, whether it's voguing, whether it's doing runway, whether it's through fashion, whether it's through realness. They get to express themselves in a free space. So you would look at it as maybe like a fashion show or a talent show. There's a new show out today called Legendary, which will kind of show you all of the nicks and crannies that go into it with the costuming. Ballroom walkers put in a lot of work. So they have been working with agencies to figure out, to bring resources to the community, because a lot of people in the community have backgrounds and not able to find jobs, and they resort to prostituting. They resort to drugs because they're dealing with depressions from not being accepted, not want to be wanted. So this is how it all ties into the HIV and AIDS, and getting back to zero, how we're doing now. There are a lot of people in the ballroom scene community who work with agencies, who have started agencies to help bring these resources to everyone, to give them housings, to figure out how to create jobs for them. So that's where we're at right now. Like I told Al earlier, we had a conference this weekend called House Lives Matter, where we are bringing the ballroom scene community from all over the country together to figure out how we can meet these needs that are not being met in the ballroom scene. Because even though we have these resources available to these young people and even some of the older people, we're not getting them to use it. So how do we figure out how to get them to use these resources that are being presented to them? Just at the ball that we had this weekend, the Midwest Awards Ball, there was a trailer outside for free HIV testing in order to get into the ball. We're putting it out there for everyone to see, but how do we get the people in the community to actually use these resources? Al?
Thank you. I know there probably already are a number of people who might have questions, so please, if you want to vocalize your question on audio, please raise your hand and Andrew can unmute you. Otherwise, please feel free to put your questions in the chat room. So the ballroom community has grown from the 1920s to where we are now, and the scene has changed. And there's now, as I understand, the Kiki Ball. So there's a whole new generation of ball children that are evolving as we speak. So it's a community that has its own culture, its own language, its own history, and it's an important community because the ball house community is not located, or the house ballroom community is not located in one state. The house ballroom community travels, and you can speak more to that, Father, about how the ball house community travels across the nation and sometimes even internationally.
So yes, so the ballroom scene has grown. We have a scene in Paris, we have a scene in Canada, we have a scene in Costa Rica. So as you're building, as you're coming together as a family, houses are in each state, country. People want to go and support and get their name out in the scene to achieve the legendary status that I received this weekend. And so they're traveling, and now since the pandemic, it seems to be every week to go to a ball. There's a ball happening in every state right now. It opens up. There were 3 balls this weekend. So people are traveling, and so people are doing what they feel they need to do to get to these balls.
And so hence we do have some concerns about transmission of communicable diseases. And there was an early study that I'm not sure if you're familiar with it, Father, that was done, I think in 2000, that showed a transmission route that followed the different balls through the Northeast at least. So we do know that, that transmission is an issue, especially when people travel. So we definitely, I think, want to have this conversation. How do we keep our ballroom children safe? What can persons like yourself, fathers and or mothers, do to protect their children, protect their community? What are we not doing as providers? So with that, I do want to open up the floor to my fellow facilitators, Minister Patton and Pastor Straight, if you have any questions, as well as if the audience has any questions.
Thanks, Al. I did want to ask Father Flocka if you would talk a little bit more about houses. How do they work, and how are they created? I have some sense that houses are created for people who are creating new families. And if you could give me a little bit more understanding about exactly how individual houses work, how they're created, and how many of them that there might be, and what the leaders of or the heads of those houses' responsibility would be to the members of those houses.
So you are correct. So houses are created from family. Most houses that you see are a family base. You will see about a good 5 or 6 of them start a house. Just recently, it's been seeming like, anyone can start a house, but mostly notable members in the ballroom community who have access to resources are normally the ones who start a house. And they're here for the resources. They're providing, the youth with the knowledge and to exceed in the ballroom community. Back in the day, it was for general knowledge, how it is to survive in the world, how to maintain a job, how to do, to attain whatever it is that you are to attain. That is the responsibilities of a father or a mother or even an overseer of a house, is how do you help these younger people who are up under you follow and to obtain these resources that they need. And so this is why we met this weekend, because a lot of mothers and fathers have resources as how to survive in the world, how to, get your next paycheck or how to get this money. But a lot of the newer leaders don't have the resources to how to tell someone, okay, so if you're dealing with mental health, you need to go here. If you're having issues with HIV or AIDS, you need to go here, or even feel comfortable talking to someone like that. And I would say that we probably right now, I think we're probably up to about 32 houses, and they're popping out of the woodworks everywhere.
There are many young people, particularly here in Chicago, who are disassociated both with family and with other organizations. I don't believe that they are members of the ball community and have houses, but there's this ongoing issue of young people who are disconnected from their families, disconnected from community, and really find themselves kind of on the streets. Do you have any kind of statistics about how many of those young people exist and how many of them actually end up finding the ball community?
I don't have specific statistics of it, but I will say that is majority of the ballroom. Majority of ballroom community participants. I can speak here from Chicago and even probably from New York. We have designated areas where the LGBT community convenes, and you will see a lot of them up there and just being on the streets, and you can tell, and you kind of gravitate to them. That is kind of where, you know, you get these new people that are coming in, and how people stray away from their families and they do stray to ballroom. That is why a lot of people do come to ballroom, because ballroom is a family underneath it all, underneath the competition. It's someone relatable to you. It is someone who has been through what you've been through, and that's, you know, who they can connect with. And like I said in the beginning, that's how the ballroom scene actually kind of started, because a lot of people were not accepted by their family and they were pushed out of their houses. And so they created these houses so that they can feel that sense of familyship. And one thing I will say that the ballroom community really does know, that you need that camaraderie with your family, you need that acceptance. And this is why houses continue to evolve and continue to grow, because once you don't feel accepted here, you know, you create a new group of people and you get accepted there. Ballroom says this, where it's the chosen family, because in ballroom you kind of get a chance to choose your family.
Thank you so much for that. One of the things that I am very, very concerned about in our general community, and one of the things that I believe wholeheartedly that the church will give an account for before God one day, is that we have not created spaces for our young LGBT community. I applaud the fact that ballroom spaces exist, houses exist for young people to find places where they are loved and cared about. But I am saddened, and I am so disappointed that the church has not become one of those places where maybe in addition to finding talent and finding, you know, other ways to express who you are in the ball community, you can also have that love and support from church. I think it's such a hugely important thing that we've got to do for our young LGBT community. As a person who grew up in church and grew up as a young MSM, I know the value of loving God, of having support, of having you know, a sense of direction, morality that the church offers, and those things coexist with my human sexuality. They coexist with me being the person that God created me to be. And so I think we have to do a much, 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 much better job within our faith communities of creating spaces for our young people to be able to find that sense of home, in addition to, not as opposed to, but in addition to the kind of love and support they get from the ball community.
Yes, and I think that one of the things that just came to mind is I think that we have an opportunity here for Father Flocka to find an affinity with an agency like PCS with a church like your church, Pastor Straight, or Minister Patton, that we can create these dynamics where we can work together in a synergy. I think Minister Patton, you were speaking.
No, I
No,
think that Pastor Legendary Father Flock. I think that was him speaking. I'm awake.
No, I was just saying I was glad that you touched on that point, because I grew up in the church. I grew up Baptist, and as I grew older and I started to find myself and and who I was, it kind of strayed me away from the church because I knew it wasn't accepting of it. But I'm one of the more level-headed ones who stayed on the staff and still, knew that I needed the church in my life. So I agree with you. There needs to be a way to tie that in, because a lot of the ballroom community participants are believers and they grew up in the church, but they just don't feel like they have that sense of acceptance there.
Yes, among many of our young Black MSM or SGL, same gender loving men, when they hear the chords of Amazing Grace, they know that song. They know about church, but what they also know is rejection from family and from church. So we need to change that dynamic and change that narrative so we can accept our young person as they are, accept them as they come to the church, and create a safe space for them to be in the church or in agencies like PCS or Aunt Martha's or anywhere else. And that's the challenge, I think, because sometimes while we talk about the vulnerable populations, we're just as likely to be oppressors of oppressed people ourselves. So oppressors have learned how to be the oppressors. Those who've been oppressed have learned to be the oppressors. And we have those blind spots that we accept certain people from the LGBT community, but not all people. And so we want to lead with love, not judgment. And that would include our house ball community.
Okay, and I like what you just said, Al. And Legendary Father Flocker, going back, Pastor Straight questions were some of my questions, but I still have a few more in the ball community or culture. Can you tell us why is it so important, even for some that might not understand and some might be a little confused? Tell us why it's so important, and then can you go back to the house, fathers of the house and mothers of the house, and break it down, because I know with having some that are coming into the house fold of the ball culture, I'm pretty sure there was some psychological damage done with those that was pushed out of homes. Like you, I grew up in the Baptist church. I've been in this Baptist church, and I hate when people label me as this. I'm the type of preacher that preach Jesus to me. I don't care about denomination. Preach Jesus to me. But I understand in the Baptist church, the culture and the style was not welcome and accepted. Even some of the musicians that I knew that were of that type of lifestyle, it was kept quiet because they just, you got to tell me you got a gift. I just need you to play. I don't need you to forefront or showcase what your sexuality is. None of that. I just need you to keep it quiet, keep it here, play, do your job. That's it. And I saw some musicians suffer from that. And believe it or not, there's a lot of gospel musicians that are out there nowadays that are finally coming out that have been like this all this time, and nobody really realized that song was made by this person, and now they were, well, I got to disassociate myself from them because they're part of this community, they're part of this lifestyle. But we're all children of God. Like Pastor Straight said, why are we judging people? We can't judge anybody. We've all done some wrong somewhere, but your lifestyle is who God created you to be. Be who you are, regardless of what somebody says or try to say against you, this and that. Be who you are. And I know inside with the houses, the structure with the fathers and the mothers, there's a different type of structure and support system that is there versus what that person came from with their natural biological mother and father who pushed them out. Can you explain the support system and the breakdown in the houses?
So The support system, it is basically like the support system that you would expect from your family. So you expect that if you're in trouble in the middle of the night at 12:30 a.m., you expect if you call your mother or your father, they're going to pick up and they're going to answer, and they're going to be there for you. Like I've stayed on the phone constantly with my daughter. She's a cisgender woman who, she has, issues with her child. She knows that she can call me at any time of the day or whenever and say, "Hey, father, look, this is what's going on. What do you think? How do you think about this?" I've sat on the phone, listened to my kids cry. And the support is given back to me the same way. I contracted COVID in December, and my kids were checking up on me, making sure that I was okay, and saying, "Father, I need you to get better because I need your help. I can't bug you right now because you're sick. I need you to get better." It's the same support system that you expect from a family in a house. But because you didn't get it in your family because of who you were, you found it somewhere else. It's very important because we were created to be around people. We were created to be loved. You have to have that in order to be able to thrive. And everyone in the ballroom scene community are very talented in different ways, whether it's doing makeup, doing hair, dancing, or knowing how to style, how to dress. You can't prevail as a person if you don't have a support system behind you. And that is also the role of a mother or a father, is to bring that child to their greatest potential, to tell them that I believe in you, you can do it. Well, maybe I wouldn't do this, I would go this way. And you get the reward out of seeing them excel.
Excellent. I'm sure you're familiar with the House of Latex and possibly the Fireball that was out in New Jersey. So as you know, there've been some attempts to engage the house ballroom community in the past. What have we done wrong as providers, and what can we do better to make that connection with the house ballroom community?
So if I can be completely honest, the ballroom scene community does not like to be looked at as numbers. And I feel that if you are really going to, want to reach out and engage to them, be involved, be engaged. I'm not telling you to be at every ball, but kind of learn more about who we are and what we do. I will say that is probably where we go wrong. I know I met you at the ball that we had here in Chicago, that Tim came up to. Just pop up every now and then. There is a Dr. Bell. She's very known in the ballroom community. She was one of the ones who you would see at a ball, even if she wasn't working. You would see her at maybe, going out to dinner with someone in the ballroom community. She built that relationship with leaders in our community where people entrusted in her, that, okay, it's more than just getting a number from me. It's more of who I am as a person. You get me, you understand. And she's very engaging with us on and off. And she's been around, I want to say, for have to be over 10 years, because she was around when I first started. And she's been consistent for those 10 years. I would say that's probably where you probably need to pick up at a little bit.
Yes, Valerie Spencer, a trans woman from California, you may know of her or know her. She was with us last week, and she said, I'm more than just a finger. And I think that that's what you're saying too, is that we have to treat the ball room members as more than just a number, more than just a finger, so I can reach my my goals for testing. And I would encourage you, Father Flocka, as you are engaging with this new group that you said met last weekend, to encourage them to reach out to churches and other community organizations and let us know how we can be a part of the solution.
We definitely will. We're meeting in Ohio in August. So, they asked that we tabled everything, and we said, okay, when we meet back in August, we're going to come up with more solutions. Even here in Chicago, we're definitely monthly meetings so that we can start to engage the agency Gilead, who's around. So it's just because ballroom is so much of a competition. we kind of stray away from the real needs of why ballroom was created. And so this is why, House Lives Matter has started to come back around, because the ballroom has grown from, the family aspect. We still have that, but now we're growing into this conglomerate where we are now. It was an underground scene. Now we're on HBO Max where, Pose is out. So, there's money to be made now. So we're trying to figure out how to get back to the basics of what's going on here in ballroom. And I can definitely bring that up to them, and say, hey, I did this webinar, this is where they're talking, they want to be engaged too, and figure out how we can engage them. We're all about finding the resources that, to help us, meet the needs of the ballroom community.
Excellent. And just so you know, we will be doing a training for young Black MSM, same gender loving men, in the fall. And it will be a position where they can get a stipend for being trusted messengers in the community. So I'll invite you to keep that in the back burner, that we'd love to train some of your house ball members to be those trusted messengers, and they can actually make a little bit extra money on the side too, while doing something that we hope that they would enjoy doing.
And Al, I want to jump in and say too, thank you for bringing that point up, because as we look at every individual, they are more than, just a thing. Young Black MSMs are more than just men who have sex with men, and they're more than just Black, and they're more than just, they have a total body, mind, and spirit. And so part of what me, Minister Patton, and other faith leaders want to do is to truly be a part of rounding that person out, and having safe spaces where persons can, explore their spirituality and understand their connection with God, and still be encouraged to be, the people that God created them to be. And so as you think about ways that you improve what the ball scene offers to those young individuals, please consider, partnerships with people like us who also are looking to help develop that spiritual and even mental health for those young people, that they don't have to be left out there without every aspect of their lives being addressed. And I wanted to ask you a quick question about all of us have, and I'm going to quickly point out the issues that the church has. But as you look at the ball community, what issues do you see within the community that might be even dangerous or harmful, that you'd like to see corrected? And how do we help? I mean, we're talking about HIV here and ways that we can get to zero, but there's got to be other issues within the community that as a legendary father, you would like to address and to talk about. So what are some of those pitfalls or dangers or issues that exist within the ball community that you'd like to see changed?
So there is definitely a growing rise of substance abuse. It is, ballroom is also known as drug, sex, and rock and roll. So a lot of, and this is why, the getting to zero is, even greater, because, with drugs comes sex, unprotected sex. So, substance abuse, and it's a growing rise. We just had a ball here in February on crystal meth. I would say personally, I've lost 3 friends to crystal meth within the last year. And that is a growing rise. It's something that, with everyone wanting to be who they are, they want to enjoy themselves. They're dealing with depression and many other things. So they turn to substance abuse. Another growing issue, and I won't even say a growing issue, it is the only way of life for them is, to sex work. It's been a thing from the beginning. People being afraid to, get a job because of who they are, or feeling discriminated, so they turn to sex work. I don't think that's anything that will probably ever stop. But it is a commonality for them, and it is a leader to the other two growing issues in the community. If we teach them a sense of, how to work, or even to let them know that they're able to get a job because they're trans, things could probably tend to get a little better. They feel like they can only go to an agency to work because that's who's going to accept them and want them because of whatever reason.
Hey, did we lose you there?
Yeah, I don't know. I got kicked off somehow.
It happens, no problem.
Welcome
Yeah.
back.
Yeah. So I was just saying, substance abuse and sex working. That is something that is that needs to have a control over. It's something that we're also trying to work on and figure out how we can control that. There are a couple of agencies here in Chicago who have job fairs to try to, support the LGBT community. So I don't know how it is that, we can engage you guys also with that. But yeah, those are two other issues.
Yeah,
Thank
thank you
you.
for that. If we address just the social determinants of health, if we address harm reduction from a non-judgmental perspective, then it allows us to be able to find ways to help young people find their way. And again, I want to, go back to, this has always been a way that the church has engaged with the community, with the Black church in particular, because we've always had these issues that we were not able to get help from in the general society. So we came together to be able to provide these services for persons within our community. We've always found ways to hire people and to help them through, being evicted and having drug issues and so forth and so on. Grandmama's always had, a grandson who couldn't stay with anybody else because, everybody he stayed with, he stole from. So you come on to Big Mama's house, and that's where you stayed because that's the person who loved you and without any conditions and would help you through every single situation. And so I am excited about the idea that we can get back to places like that, especially, Minister Patton and I are on this call now and we're talking, but there are other churches out there who are doing the same kind of work. Now, part of what is an issue for me is finding people like you that has some, spiritual background to be able to say, we've got to make this connection. We've got to stop letting people off the hook for not servicing everybody in the community, and then bringing those people to the table to say, listen, we've got to deal with this. I want your help. If you're not willing to help, that's fine. But I'm going to find some other folk who are willing to help and get us together so that we can then say to those young people who are struggling to find their way, listen, you don't have to be without God. You don't have to be without spiritual support just because you've been neglected by one group of people. There's a whole nother one over here that's just waiting, to be of help and to be of assistance. So I hope that we can make these things work together so that we can provide that very, very needed resource for the ball community and just for young LGBTQIA folk in general, because without that support, we end up with a group of people who lose their way from God. And so my primary, job is that I want people to find God. And I know they don't find God without seeing God in me. I know that they don't find God if I'm not doing what I'm supposed to do, and so having the ability to find and to support young people to be able to say this, this is what God looks like. God loved the world even when the world was a stranger to God. God sent his son to die for us so that we could be reconciled and brought back in the right relationship. That's my job too. My job is to love people right where I meet them, love them right where they are, and help them in any way that I can so that they can then find this God of love that wants to be a part of their life, just like God is a part of mine. I struggle with pronouns with God. God is a spirit, has no gender, and I know that. But I was brought up in a traditional church that always referred to God as he. So when you hear me back up, it's because God is mother and father, and I know that. I just keep saying he. So anyway, I'll stop talking at this point, but that's the relationship that I am trying really, really hard to build with people, particularly those who are at risk for HIV, because we can get to zero, but we can't do it without the help of everybody. And I think that the church plays a pivotal role in making that happen.
It really does. And I agree with you on that point, because as I'm trying to find myself as a leader and a father of this house, and, I start to, get kids and things like that, I tend to want to be able to fix everything. And I made a statement to them, at the beginning of the year. I said, I can't help y'all with everything. I said, y'all need God. Like, that is something that I know is really missing in the ballroom community. That is something that, when I was, living at home with my mom, that's what I grew up on. That's who I leaned in and depended on. They instilled church in me, and it just feels like my walk of life is a little bit different, and the way I deal with situations are a lot different because I have that church background embedded in me. And so if we find a way to tie in and make people comfortable with going back to church, I think that we can grasp hold of them and we can start to, tackle other issues, because these issues can't be tackled if you don't have that faith and that backgrounding in you. There's a totally difference in a person once you have that in you.
And I like what you just said, and like Pastor Straight said, with the ministers in some of the churches that are opening up to the fact that, to accept all, we have to hold some of the pastors accountable. Because if you think about it, if the pastor's the shepherd of the flock, and if the pastor has something that he does not understand about the ball culture or the SMMs or the LGBT community, and he doesn't talk about it a lot, it creates an issue with the congregation, because they're looking at the pastor for leadership. And if the pastor is closed and have his arms folded to not learning and not coming to the table to learn about it and to get educated on it, which some of them probably have dealt into it with the psychological stand as being a pastor, and some probably hasn't. But we have to hold them accountable. Now, a lot of churches that I know that I've dealt with in the past, some of them, they frowned up on that, and when they talked about it, sometimes it was gut-wrenching to hear them talk about it, because these are people, these are God's children, regardless of what lifestyle they are. They're God's children. God created them. So I look at it from a standpoint, when churches are separated by their denominations, that sometimes creates a problem, because you have a lot of people in a lot of churches now going non-denominational, and they're accepting everybody because they look at everybody as a child of God, regardless of what your lifestyle is, what your past was, what's going on in the future. They push all that stuff of the past aside. Hey, we all are here for one reason. We're a child of God, and we all trying to get to one avenue. And with the ball community coming inside the church, I think sometimes if the pastor is brought to the table and the board, sometimes that will open up the doors, because sometimes a lot of stuff don't come in the church unless it passes that board, and that board reflects to that pastor. And sometimes the pastor is work for hire, where he can be removed at certain points, and the board says, well, no, we're not going to do this, we're not going to do that, or that's trying to stick to doctrine. It's okay to stick to doctrine, but you have to look at what Jesus did. Jesus opened himself up to everyone. He not just one, he opened up to everyone. So just imagine if the pastor of the church can open himself up, how they will open up with the congregation, because I can guarantee you, in those churches that have problem with the ball community, the LGBT community, if you remove that pastor, that congregation will accept them because that congregation knows we all have flaws. We all have sin. Sometimes that pastor looks at it as, no, I don't want that inside my church. Well, first of all, it's not your church.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things I'm hearing, and I want to again encourage Father Flocka to think about how he can bring this to the larger body to talk about partnering and collaborating and working and networking with other bodies in the community. But I think also we have to be mindful because, as I said earlier, there have been several attempts to collaborate or work with the ball community. And I remember when I used to go to the Fireball in New Jersey, it's like the HIV community wanted to come into the house ball community and take over and make everything about HIV. And as my sister Valerie says, some of the best HIV work has nothing to do with HIV. And I think if we're going to work with the ball, it can't be episodic. It can't be, well, today is the transgender day. Remember, so we're gonna act like we care about transgender people, but it's just for the day. Or now it's the month of Pride. Happy Pride, everybody. During the month of Pride, I'm going to respect LGBTQ plus people. It cannot be episodic. Either you love and care about these children or you don't. And it's not a hot and cold relationship. That's why they're in the situation they are in, because their parents were hot or cold. When you came out, I became cold. Before that, I was hot. I was there for you. And we need to not duplicate what these young people have experienced in their biological families of being rejected because of how they identify. So if the church is going to go in, you've got to go all in. And it's not just one day or 1 month out of the year, but 365. And the same thing for organizations. It can't just be because we have to meet our quota for testing of young Black men. So we're going to go and befriend a house. It needs to be a relationship that we develop. And I want to just ask Father Flocka, have you developed any relationships to date around HIV or other health disparities?
You mean with other, like, repeat the question? I'm sorry.
Have you seen within the hospital community any relationships that have been developed and nurtured either with HIV or other health disparities?
Um, yes, I have. My very first house father, he was dealing with HIV and AIDS when I got into the house, and so, like, to see him present day and how he has improved his health. And stayed on track, and and doesn't mind speaking to people. Just this weekend at a conference, I was sitting next to someone, and we had to introduce each other. They mixed us around at tables with people that we didn't know, and he kind of opened up about it. I've known him for 20 plus years, and that was one fact that I did not know. So I'm seeing people become more comfortable. I'm seeing some of the ones that have grown up with me seeing the need to actually come out about it and speak up about it. On Facebook every other day, there's someone telling their story. I will say with World AIDS Day, every year I get a sense of pride and joy in seeing that people are actually coming out and speaking about it because they know that their story can help someone else. So I see the work being put out there and trying to, be done. And that, is something that I will say that we have to keep striving at. We have to keep, doing. And the work has to keep being getting done. Someone's listening somewhere. And it's just, people are ready to adhere to what's being put in front of them when they're ready to adhere to it.
So let's spend a little bit of time talking about solutions. What are some ideas that people have either in the listening audience or among the panel? What are some ideas that you think could work to legitimately and authentically embrace the house ball community? What can the house ball community do to legitimately also, because it's a two-way street.
Yes.
It can't just be the church reaching out and saying, with the doors are open. It has to be both the community, the house ball community, the organizations like Proactive and other organizations, Project Vita and other organizations saying, we're here for you. And then of course the church saying we're here for you, but also the community saying we welcome your assistance, we welcome your support. So what can we do on all of the different fronts to work together to eradicate HIV in our lifetimes?
I think Roberta has her hand up.
I actually had a different question for Father Flocka.
Yes.
Can you talk about what some of the challenges or barriers might be for the BAL community or the LGBTQ community with finding employment?
I would say some of it is still some discrimination as into points. I would say not so much for the male figures, but the transgenders. They are still receiving underlining discrimination. So people are still not accepting to that. There are some places where they just go and they work and they don't feel comfortable working because that company doesn't really value the LGBT community. I can speak from being in retail. There are only maybe 2 companies that I work for who really embraced and had policies around, discrimination as towards the LGBT community. And I think the barrier needs to be broken where they feel comfortable being in this space with other people. So I think that's more so of the boundaries where it's at, is that the LGBT community doesn't feel protected and comfortable going to most employers for employment.
Are you finding that there are some employment industries that are welcoming?
Yes, there are. But as far as like, if you think of, if there are only certain industries that are welcoming to it, they're going to be limited amount of jobs. And that's why you probably see the ballroom community traveling across the country and moving and not having stable homes and things of that nature, because the industry in which they couldn't work in is becoming filled up. I think if we start to embrace trade school on the barroom community, maybe we can get somewhere, because I know bartenders love, LGBT community, most clothing stores, but you have to think about how many of those jobs can you get in one city with the amount of members in the community.
I believe in trailblazing, so it might be time for them to start their own industry.
And could you elaborate a little bit more on that?
I believe when, if when people are having problems finding employment, it might be time to create your own.
Mm-hmm.
So starting businesses that are welcoming of all.
Yeah.
Those in the BAL community, LGBTQ and hetero. But starting something that's going to attract everybody, but you'll be able to help your own to get employment or start their own businesses.
I will say that a lot of the agencies here, that's what's happening. They're creating jobs for, the younger youth. There are a lot of entrepreneurs that have come up in the last couple of years, but how do we get them to grow to that capacity where they can actually hire these people? Those things take time. And I think if we had more resources and training to figure out how to grow there and get there, that could possibly happen. I see it happening now. There are a lot of little businesses happening right now, but not to a point where they can hire others. But I will say, like, a couple of agencies are doing good at that, but there are only so many people that they can hire.
Okay, thank you.
I mean, and as you know, the ballroom community has been um, prominent in fashion. You know, we have Tracy Africa, who was one of the first trans women to be on a public advertisement, and there have been other House members who have risen. I think Pose has raised a whole generation of people who identify as House members or LGBTQ community that have been allowed to rise up and to be all they can be. So I think that we do see more opportunities, but I think the challenge is employers willing and able to accept a cisgender male walking in and wearing a dress or a skirt or being fashion forward. And I think that there's that judgment that people have in terms of what's appropriate, what's inappropriate. And the ballroom community flies in the face of that often. And I think if you're going to work with this community, you have to be open. You have to come with an open mind and willing to accept that they are going to express themselves the way that they feel is appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
I'd just like to jump in and say that there is, even though I agree with you, Al, I do think that it's twofold. I think that that is very true. But as a cisgender male, there are certain ways that I can and can't dress at work. And so sometimes it's appropriate to know what boundaries might look like in terms of who you are in the workplace versus who you are, at home, in the ballroom, and so forth and so on. But that's kind of an aside, because one of the questions that I have might actually speak to that issue, and that is, what is your relationship with the mental health community? I know that people who suffer trauma need mental health support. Even though I think that the church is a wonderful place to get support and that spirituality is a great gift in a person's life, I also think the church has mistaken itself as also a mental health provider, which is so untrue and unfair to people who actually need to talk with counselors, who need to work through the trauma that has existed in their lives, the dangers that they face, and so forth and so on. So what is your relationship with the mental health community around helping these young people who come from, very varied and dangerous situations sometimes, deal with and adjust to their new lives?
So we're still working on that. You have to get people to identify that they do have this. You have to get people comfortable enough to open up and say, this is, what I'm struggling with. I will say a lot of times dealing with issues, it takes a while for them to actually get comfortable to actually talk about it. And that might be a struggle with everything. And that might be the reason why we are having these constant conversations about how do we resolve these things? How do we get these people open up to tell us this? But one of the things that we deal with is that people can't afford, to go sit down and talk to someone. So we probably need more outlets for that, or ways to actually access that. I will say that's what a lot of people struggle with. Can I afford it? Do I have the insurance to do this? Do I have the resources to do that? If it's there and put in front of them and they feel like they can trust someone to do it, then we can move forward with that. So, I mean, that's something that will be put on the table, that how do we deal with this? Because we're starting to realize everything else that we thought it was, the mental health is really where it all lies.
And that's where the synergy can connect, Father, because I know that a lot of the agencies in Chicago, a lot of them get nice amounts of money to work with Black MSM. And you come to the table with your lived experience and say, I can connect you with at-risk or vulnerable Black MSM.
Mm-hmm.
And I know there's money on the table, so I'm not coming here to do this voluntarily or free. So let's talk. What does that look like for us to have a partnership? You know, what money can be pushed our way, and what can we do? So you come to the table empowered and able to say we can work together, but it has to be a partnership and not something where the community is taken advantage of, because we see that all too often with researchers coming into our community and doing research on us, not with us. We
Mm-hmm.
see agents that come in to test on us, not with us. And
Mm-hmm.
once they get their numbers, they're here today and gone tomorrow, maybe even gone today. So how do we create those long-lasting relationships with the church, with businesses, with nonprofit, community-based organizations? That's, I think, where the real conversation starts, is how do I help you achieve your goal while you help me to support and maintain our community?
I love that thought and idea, and this is why I'm here at the table. And I feel like, as nervous as I was to be on this call, there was a reason for me to be on this call, because I am, a little more level-headed, and I have that church background, and that is kind of what it is, because we're only limited to a couple of agencies that really work with us. And just this weekend, we lost another agency that we normally was working with because of the injustice and how we didn't feel connected with it. So how do we keep the long lasting relationships is something that, we do need to try to figure out. And I'm here and I'm open to it. I don't know. We just have to get people that want to stick around. They have to want to stick around.
Well, definitely start those conversations, because when you come to the table with something that I, as a consultant, look for, how do we engage at-risk, same gender loving, young Black MSM? And the only way we're going to do it is by working with trusted messengers from that community.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not enough to say, I'm a Black gay man, therefore I can go into any community and work with anybody. That's not the case. So you come in with an expertise that many agencies need, and you've got to know your value and know what you're able and willing to do, and then negotiate from that perspective, because it has to work. Getting to zero has to work for your community as well as for the agency, as well as for the church. It can't be a win for one and not for the other two, or for all, a win, 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 win. So how do we make that happen? What needs to change?
And we need to find a common ground, where we need to be where each party feels trusting of one another. How do we keep engaging? How do we not make this a one-time engagement thing? How do we continuously do this? Maybe something monthly, whereas it seems a little bit more organic, where we're actually working together to solve an issue or a problem. I think that's where it lies, that you have to build that relationship organically. But even though it is strategic, but it has to feel organic. So it can't just be a one-time thing. It has to be something that is continuously, seems like we're working together to get here, and where it seems like this relationship is going to last. I'm not sure what that looks like, but I definitely know from previous experience of working with things to achieve a common goal, it has to be something that is continuous, that happens monthly, where you can start to rely on each other.
So, Pastor Charles Strait or Minister Oliver Patton, what do you think the church can do? What changes? There could be any changes is a positive change. What changes do you think the church can make, or members from PCS or any other nonprofit or other organization? What changes can your body, your institution make to be more inviting to the house ball community? And to Father, what changes have to happen in the house ball community to make it work?
Al, I would say, for me, from my own opinion, I would say what would have to change is all the excuses would have to stop. Stop all excuses. Because if you look at the ball community, my example might fit and it might not. when Kirk Franklin popped up on the scene with gospel music and it hit the nightclubs, they had a problem with it, but then they saw how the mainstream of his gospel rendition of music hit the nightclubs, which impacted the youth because now they listen to gospel in the nightclubs, which brought some of them back to church. They jumped down his throat, but he just did what God told him to do, what he was instructed. He touched them by his music, which went mainstream, which crossed barriers and went over to the club scene, which brought some of those back into the church. So what I think from my standpoint and looking at everything that with the ball community and the church is that the church sometimes have to stop giving excuses why they cannot connect with the ball community. Sometimes the church has to do it all the way around because sometimes you got churches and communities that won't go outside the four walls at all. They stay within the comforts of them four walls. So when you open everything up and have an open mind about everything, then you can start to engage with each other because now you're seeing more than what's behind those four walls. When you're coming outside, you see a lot of stuff going on. Now you can engage and say, well, hey, how can we as a church get involved in this and stop giving excuses and be like, well, we're only here one day a week. No, it's a church. You're supposed to be there 7 days a week if you can. If you can't be there, somebody should be there. But I believe for me, some of the excuses have to stop because it's a lot of excuses coming from the church, why they don't want to do this, why they don't want to do that, why they want to be a part of the ball community or the LGBT community, but you're a part of the prisons ministries. You go into the prisons. So why you can't go into the ball communities and let them come to you and everybody sit down at the table and try to figure out how we can work together instead of trying to just shy away from things. The excuses have to stop from my standpoint.
That was powerful, Minister Patton. I like the analogy. The example. You can go into prisons where there are murderers, rapists, and all kinds of people who've committed crimes, but you don't feel comfortable going into a ball where these are just children who've been neglected, thrown out of their homes. They've been the victims, but you don't feel comfortable going to minister to them. How do you balance that? How does that make any kind of sense?
And from my perspective, to answer your question, Al, is that, first of all, we, Minister Patton and us and myself, we put ourselves out there. We let you know that we're here, that spirituality to us extends to everyone, and that anything that we can do that will support the young people in the ball community, we want to make, and old ones too, for that matter. I don't want to just stop at young people, that we want to be available to provide that spiritual support. The other thing I think that happens is that we work together, right? I don't know the support you need, Father Flocker, if you don't tell me. So
Exactly.
reaching out to the faith community to say, and listen, I was an early worker in HIV. I know that rejection happens when you reach out to the faith community around controversial issues. We started an AIDS ministry at my church in '84, and we reached out to tons of churches asking for support and asking them to provide HIV services to their members and education and so on and so on, and got rejected time and time again. However, we did the work. So I say to you, reaching out to us to say, hey, listen, I talked to this young man the other day, he's got a basis in spirituality, but he doesn't have a church home, or he doesn't have a pastor that can talk to him. It's not, for me, it's not about a member. It is about supplying, the kind of spiritual support that a person needs, whether they ever set foot into Faith United Methodist Church, where I have the great privilege of being pastor, or not. So having that connection so that you can pick up the phone and call, there's a person that's in the hospital, they overdose, they need somebody to go and pray for them. Would you mind reaching out? That, I think, builds the kind of relationship between the spiritual community, the church community, and the ball community that allows us to go forward in a way that connects those two organizations. We don't need to be separate because we're part of the same Black family, regardless to whether or not we walk in lockstep with one another right at this moment. We got the same grandmother, we got the same uncle, we are part of the same community. And so we've got to align our services. And I do believe that the ball community provides service, for those young people, and the church does as well. So when we align those services so that you and I are in lockstep and we can say, here, I got somebody that needs you. I might actually have a person in church that needs a family connection where they can be authentically themselves. And then I can refer them to you and say, here's a young person who needs an outlet. Here's a young person who needs, so that's the way that I see us, moving forward. And not just us, not just Minister Patton and myself, but to engage, as many spiritual leaders and like Minister Patton says, and then hold them accountable if they say no, and say, hey, what do you think your job is if it's not to do this? Anyway, I'm rambling at this point, but that's kind of my answer.
It was good rambling though. I think, saying if the churches actually start to, put it out there, that they really do support the LGBT community. And, if they start to have, little, seminars where you can invite maybe someone from, the ballroom community come to speak to those people, because we've dealt with a lot of what they're dealing with. You can probably start to engage like that. But I think that comes with wanting to invite us into the church, making us feel welcome. I know that different churches invite other people in to speak about other things. That this could be one of those things that you can do to engage, and maybe we can, connect the two together, or even get members from the ballroom community to come to the church. It can work hand in hand. That was just something where, as you were talking, that kind of popped up in my head.
Yeah, I think it does take, meeting people where they're at and understand that sometimes in the house ball scene, there are those people who've been so hurt and so violated and so traumatized that they perpetuate the same thing on community. They act out more than they might otherwise need to because they're just trying to find their place in the world. And when you're rejected time and time again, you can either crawl under a rock or you can just decide I'm going to be ultra fabulous and I'm going to give much more. And I think that these young people are trying to find who they are in a world that does not accept them for how they are. And it creates that dynamic. And I would say to anyone who's listening, I would ask you the question, have you ever felt rejected? Have you ever felt judged? Have you ever felt that people treated you less than? And if it's ever happened to you, just imagine that being your 24/7 and how you would deal with that. Again, as I said earlier, it's we've been oppressed as Black and brown people. And we've learned from the oppressors how to be oppressors. And we then go and oppress others. And oftentimes that oppression is placed upon the LGBTQ community. And we see many of our trans women being murdered or killed. We see many people being attacked because of how they identify. And I think that we, as a community, we sometimes accept it and we don't speak out against it. But if all lives matter, if all Black lives matter, then do not trans lives count as a Black life? And so it's really just looking outside of your bubble, looking beyond your blinder, and not just accepting those people who meet your standard of what is appropriate, but to say you are a human being, and because you're a human being, I love you. I may not express myself the way you express yourself, but I love you as you are, just as you are. So we have about 14 more minutes before we get to the half hour. And I really want to encourage our listening crowd to throw questions in the chat room or raise your hand and be unmuted. There's a good time to ask those questions. You may have wondered about the ball. I know that Father Flock had promised that he would tell us about the stars, legends, icons, and the different status that people have in the house ball community. So if you want to take that on, Father, well, other people might come up with some questions, but you can talk about that for a minute.
Okay. So the goal, I mean, the highest right now that we have status in ballroom is icon. So everyone kind of comes in and starts as a star. Pretty much a star is someone who has been walking and has made themselves notable in ballroom. They have, walked a couple of balls, made some hot moments. A star is normally around for about 1 to 3 years. The next level after that is a statement, meaning that you have been walking your category for more than 3 years and you have really made a name for yourself in ballroom. The next step after that is legendary, which we've been walking about 6 to 10 years. You have mastered your category. You are, anytime that they talk about the category, your name has to be mentioned. And then an icon who has made a name for themselves in the category, but have groomed and made other and helped transition other people in ballroom and has created new stars, have created a legacy within ballroom. That is it. There is also a pioneer, kind of someone who has started the scene where they're at, the older generation. So those are the accolades within ballroom, which each person is in ballroom trying to obtain.
Thank you. And I think the other thing I think is important to note about ballroom that I found when I was first introduced to the house ball scene is that everybody can find a place. When I would go to balls, the big boys who sometimes are like not my cup of tea type thing, they go in and they walk face and they slay because they've got the cutest faces on that you ever want to see. And when they walk face, it's like no one's looking at their size. It's about you're coming and bringing face, or you brought realness with a twist, or you rock executive realness, or you vogue down. So you find your category, and it really allows everyone and anyone to be a winner. Once you have mastered your craft, anyone can be a winner in the house ball scene. I believe. Father, you can speak more to that.
Yeah, it is. You really can find your place in ballroom. There is something for everyone. You just have to find out what you're good at, what your passion is. Like you said, you can either walk realness, you can walk runway, you can walk sex siren. Everyone is accepted in ballroom scene. It's ballroom is full of singers, dancers, poets, writers. We have people with degrees. Everyone is accepted in there, and that's what the ballroom community was built off of, everyone being accepted. You can do just about anything that you want to do in the ballroom scene.
Father Flocka, the ballroom sounds a lot like church. I don't know. I might be the oldest one on this call, but that's exactly what church was. You did your little Easter speech because the church wanted to support you and help you, to groom you. You sang your first song. You couldn't sing, but it didn't matter because the church wanted to support you and egg you on and tell you. I started preaching at a very young age, and I know those sermons had nothing. But those folk got behind me and said, "Oh, you just a wonderful preacher, and the Lord is gonna bless you." And it sounds very much like the ball community does same thing for its family members. And there's no reason why we should not be working together to help those young people be the best young people that they can be and strengthen. And that's the thing that bothers me, about our lack of working together, is that our community needs all the strength that it can. We are being attacked on every side in the current world in which we live. We've lived through a president that did not like people of color, that didn't like people who came from other countries, at least certain countries anyway, where Black and brown people live. We lived through some of the most racist kinds of behaviors that you could imagine. Who would ever think that we would be back to a Jim Crow era situation where the police would just shoot folk down in the street and care nothing about it, like they did after Reconstruction and so on and so on. So our community needs all the love and the support that it can possibly get. So we've got to work together to help this new generation of people acknowledge their fullness and their total being, loved by God, loved by community, and be authentically who they are. I hate to ramble, but I grew up in a world where gay people had to be in a closet, where you could lose your job, where you could, you had to be in the closet. But now we live in a society where if you are the right complexion, you can be fully who you are and live out loud. If you got enough money, you can be Caitlyn Jenner. But in our community, you are attacked and you are, belittled, and you don't get to live authentically who you are. So we've got to create these avenues where, young Black people can live authentically as the person that they were created by God to be, and be happy, and to find spaces where they can flourish. And I love hearing you, describe the ball community in that way, because flourishing is what we've got to do in our community.
Yes. And we need to make room at the table for these young individuals. And also for you, Father, is that your people need to be able, your children need to be able to go to different organizations, say, I want a seat at the table. I no longer want to be on the menu. I want to see the table. I want to be part of the solution. I no longer need you to come and tell me how we should behave in ballroom. I want to be part of the solution making, the decision making. And that's when we're truly going to have that collaborative and that networking, that kumbaya that I think we need to get to zero. When all lives matter and we have you at our table. So I do invite you, Father Flocka, to think about working with agencies. And I'm a grant writer, so I would love to have invite you into a grant where we can say we can access 50 individuals who identify as ballroom house members between the ages of 18 and 29. That's our target population. That's what we consider the vulnerable population needs the services. And we can't be running away from you. If you're our population, we should be running too.
Yes. Well, I am open to that. We have been in contact. We shall keep in contact. I am definitely open to figuring out where I fit in here. So I'm here.
Well, I can tell you right now that there may be some opportunities at PCS, there may be some opportunities at the churches who are here on the line with us today. Lean into those opportunities and, know your worth, know your value, and know the worth and value of your community. And I think as we talk about getting to zero, we're talking about saving lives. And that goes beyond saving the lives of the people that look like you and who think like you. It means saving the lives of people who think otherwise, who might be injection drug users, who might be alcoholics, who might have mental health issues, who may be ex-offenders returning to the community. We cannot be selective and talk about getting to zero. It's all or none at the end of the day. So I think that as we come to a close, it's been a wonderful conversation, Father, and we have about 5 minutes left. And I do want to ask if there are any questions from the audience, if people want to raise their hand and speak. But I do want to give you folks, first we'll turn to our guest speaker, let you say some closing words, and then Reverend and Minister will say their closing words. And I'm going to ask Minister Patton to speak last and close us out in prayer. And just so people know, Minister Patton was earned his master's degree last week, and he's been hardworking. So we want to applaud him and recognize that. Also, this is Pride Month, so please take the time to go to a Pride event and support our LGBT communities. And we look forward to seeing you next week. And we'll be here through the month of July. So please keep an eye open for our topics. Father, why don't you take the floor, and then we'll pass on to our other two co-facilitators.
I just want to thank you guys for having me here tonight. As he said in the beginning, Midwest Mother Ayana is hosting a ball Pride weekend. I will get you the dates. She's open July 3rd. It's a Sunday at 7 p.m. It's going to be at the Haven Entertainment Center on 932 East 43rd Street. So if you want to learn more and actually see a ball in person, you can come up to there.
Show up and show out.
Thank you so much, Father Flocka. It's been wonderful having this conversation with you. And as usual, I am grateful for this chance to be a part of this Getting to Zero conversation. And congratulations, Minister Patton. It is always great working with you and Al. And I hope everybody have a wonderful rest of your week.
Oh, Pastor Straight, Reverend Straight, do you want to mention about our Juneteenth event?
On June 19th, which is actually Juneteenth, we will have a community gathering at Faith United Methodist Church. That's at 15015 Grant Street in Dalton, where we are honoring Black fathers and examining the health and wholeness and wellness of the community. So we'll have lots of vendors there to offer services, from mental health services to physical health services to anything that you can name. We're trying to get as many folk there to talk about their services as possible. We will have some information about the upcoming elections, because the political health of our community is also very, very important. And we'll have free food and games and all kinds of opportunities for folk to have fun. So join us from 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. at the Faith United Methodist Church, 15015 Grant Street in Dalton, Illinois. And as always, you're always welcome to come to worship with us at 11 o'clock. So we will worship from 11 to 12, and then our Juneteenth event will happen at 1. Thank you, Al. I totally forgot about that.
No problem. And Father Flocka, you may want to come through and vogue through for us, you know, to show the audience what voting looks like. You know, it's about
I could definitely do that. Just send me the information again, and I will come through.
Wonderful. Yay. Al, you'll take care of that for me?
Yes, I will. I definitely will.
Okay.
All right, and this been a blast with everyone, and thank you guys for the support on me getting my master's. As we close out this evening, with everybody bow their heads with me wherever you are. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for what transpired tonight, Father, as an educational session for all of us, Father, because we know that we can all learn at all different ages and all different times, Father, but we're asking that you continue to be who you've always been, Father. We ask that you bless everyone that you have created, all the things down here that is going on, Father, from the mass shooting at the schools, Father. Bless those families that are going through right now that have to bury their children, Father, because we don't know what that feels like. And, you know, we just want to support them in our prayers from here to there, Father. And we're asking that you continue to be who you've always been, where you sit on your throne or where your son sits beside you, Father, intervening for us. We're asking that you continue to be who you are. And with you being who you are, Father, that lets us know who we are. As strong as we are in whatever it is that you have set for us, Father, we ask that you bless those that are on this call tonight. Bless the ball community. Bless the LGBTQ community. Bless us as a whole, Father, for we are your children. We ask in your son in Jesus' name until we meet again. Amen.
Ashe, ashe, ashe. Happy Pride.
All right.
Thanks everyone for attending. We're going to end it now. We'll see you all same time, same place next week. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Blessings, blessings, blessings.